when Donald Trump was running for president against Hillary Clinton, the Hillary Clinton campaign lawyers paid an opposition research firm to come up with oppo on then candidate Trump. So this firm shops out to Christopher Steele, who was a British spy, and he comes up with this document that would become known as a Steele Dossier. The Crossfire Hurricane investigators used the allegations in the Steele Dossier to apply for a FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was a member of the Trump campaign at the time, and view his communications with other members of the Trump campaign. So when special counsel John Durham later investigates this, he finds that there was not proper justification for opening this investigation. By then, everybody knows that the Steele Dossier was fake, and the spying on Carter Page was not justified because it was based on false information.
All right, guys, it is Tuesday. I'm already tired. This guy doesn't stop. Two amazing guests headed your way today. We're going to talk to Elle Purnell. She is looking into the Kash Patel nomination for the Senate and exposing what's really going on with both the New York Times and an outside leftist force to try to stop Kash Patel. But you're going to want to hear this story. It's unbelievable what's happening. And then Brent Buchanan, our friend at Cygnal Polling, has got brand new numbers. We are bringing you the numbers and the explanation that nobody else is in explaining what the current environment is. He tested RFK, Elon Musk, so much stuff. You are going to hear this nowhere else. You're going to want to sit and see this. Tomorrow, by the way, Congressman Ben Cline of Virginia is going to talk to us about the efforts of DOGE and cutting government spending and everything that Donald Trump's doing. And then Friday, Victor Davis Hanson. But as I said, yesterday, the president, he was on fire on the issue of executive orders. First, I mean, I didn't even say first. I see the stack when he gets to and I feel like it's a deck of cards. Like, where's he going? And it's all over the place. I'm appointing these people to this. I'm announcing this. Da, 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 da. So he gets out there and he says, hey, the Biden policy of banning plastic straws and making us all use paper straws that get gross and are disgusting, that's done. Let's get back to plastic straws. I mean, let's cut the BS. This is not some big environmental dog whistle thing that the Biden administration, let's just stop. Then he says, hey, we're imposing a tariff of 25% steel and aluminum everywhere. Everyone's paying it. Australia, Canada, Japan, you name it. You're all paying it. No exemptions. Everyone's in. Trying to bring back manufacturing and jobs to the United States. And then he gets to the issue of hostages. And by the way, he's meeting with King Abdullah and his son, the Crown Prince of Jordan, today at the White House. I think we'll see some announcements on this. That's my guess. I mean, in advance of this, a lot of staff work goes into these meetings so that when the two principals meet, you get about 80% baked so that they say, our team has agreed to the following. Anyway, I think there's some progress that's going to go and announce today with the King and Crown Prince of Jordan. But he made it very clear yesterday in the Oval Office that he wants these hostages out, all of them. No more onesies and Tuesdays. He says, as far as I'm concerned, if all the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock. And if not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and not 1, not 3 and not 4 and 2 by Saturday. And after that, all hell is going to break out. Hamas, let them go. It's over. He's not kidding. I'm just telling you this right now, guys. By the way, he also had this epic announcement that I know many people probably didn't care about, but I'm just going to share this with you. So I'm in college, my junior year. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I do this internship because someone had recommended it to me, and I wrote the paper at the end of the year. And my paper was why I hated my internship. I don't know why I took it. Someone had recommended it. I thought it'd be interesting. And it was this agency that trains federal executives how to testify in front of Congress, which I thought would be kind of cool. It's just, trust me when I say no bueno. Yesterday, by the way, I got an A on the paper. President Trump, yesterday, in that stack of executive orders, one of them is an executive order eliminating the Federal Executive Institute. I still have the folders and I saved all the stuff, but There's just something personal that I thought I'd share with you on that because I thought it was kind of fascinating. And then you got Elon Musk still sleeping on a mattress. This is a billionaire. I'll tell you this, if I make $1 billion, I'm not sleeping on a mattress in a government office. That's how committed this guy is. We owe him a bit of thanks, I think. For decades, we kicked the can down the road. Oh, it's okay. It's only $1 billion. It's only 500 million. Da, 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 da. Elon Musk is exposing the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and frankly, where the Democrats have hidden their policy agenda. They hand out contracts to all their friends. They promote their agenda, and it's getting exposed department by department by department. Smart accounting practices. He tweeted about the Treasury that he's adding categorization codes, which is necessary to pass financial audits. Like, this is common sense, folks. And the Democrats are defending this. That's what we're up against because this is where they put all of their people and their money. Anyway, we got a great conversation headed your way. As I said, Brent Buchanan is here from Cygnal Polling with an explanation of what the environment looks like. And as I said at the front, I mean, some insights into subjects that normally don't get covered. Like, he's giving us what the approval rating is on the Trump agenda, on RFK, on Elon Musk. It's fascinating. You're going to want to see this. But first, we're going to talk to Elle Purnell from the Federalist Society, who's been covering Kash Patel, his nomination, what the Democrats and the left are trying to do to throw roadblocks in the way of him coming in, and why. That's the key thing. Why does it need to be reformed? You remember the Steele Dossier? She's going to break it down for us like no one else. Victor Davis Hanson, by the way, Friday. Ben Klein tomorrow. Amazing panel Thursday. Just hit the subscribe button. And my newsletter drops today, SeanSpicer.com. It's free. Before I get to Elle and then Brent, I want to tell you, I know sleep is a key component of wellness. It's proven in every study now, a good night's sleep is critical to wellness. I made it a priority of mine to make sleep a priority, going to bed early and all this stuff. But then I added Beam's Dream Powder. Now, I've taken melatonin, magnesium, all the natural stuff that's we've tried in the past, right? Beam's Dream Powder is a blend of all of it in one amazing formula. I love the cocoa cinnamon. They know that. I have the brownie one too. There's a peppermint one. I mean, you go to the site and I'll tell you in a minute, you will know what I'm talking about, but it makes sleep so much better. I wake up raring to go, no grogginess because it's all natural and the flavors are amazing. There's a reason that professionals and athletes all around the world are using it because it's got all of the natural ingredients. So if you want to try it like I do every night, try it by going to shopbeam.com/Spicer, shopbeam.com/Spicer for up to 40% off. Use code Spicer at checkout. Trust me, it makes a difference for me. People ask me all the time. I love it. It tastes great. I take one scoop, put it in water, heat it up, boom, 30 minutes before bed. Trust me, you will sleep like never before. Also, in my wellness journey, though, we've been talking about trimming the fat. I've been trying to trim my fat too, right? I want to not just cut the government, but I've been trying to get healthier and incorporate all this wellness stuff that we've been talking about on the show. One way I did that is incorporating PhD weight loss because I've tried every fad diet. None of them work, at least not in the long term. I saw my buddy Seb Gorka. He agreed with me. He tried it because he recognized 7 out of 10 Americans are overweight. You get to work with an expert, a nutritionist who you check in with every week. I've been down a few pounds ever since then. The whole thing was founded by Dr. Ashley Lucas, who's a former professional athlete, now a doctor. And she built this amazing staff of professionals that work with you to create a tailored plan for you to help lose the weight and then maintain it. They give you some customized food. I love these shakes that they have. I'm not normally a shake guy, but I'm telling you, these things are filling. They taste amazing. I love the caramel one, by the way, if you go this. So give them a call. It's the quick, healthy way that's totally MAGA, right? Make America Healthy Again. So give them a call, 1-864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in Elle Purnell. She is an editor at The Federalist covering Kash Patel and his nomination. Let's go. Elle, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean. Great to be here.
All right. I love what you've been writing in The Federalist because as someone who lived through the Steele Dossier, spent way too many hours in front of the Mueller folks, this is a topic that I think needs to be exposed more. And your stories on this have been amazing. So I want to just start with this because the reason they're going after Kash Patel is a lot of his actions surrounding the Steele Dossier. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just start with explaining Give us a brief history of the Steele Dossier, and then we can get into Kash's the attacks the left is making on him.
So in 2016, when Donald Trump was running for president against Hillary Clinton, the Hillary Clinton campaign lawyers paid an opposition research firm to come up with oppo on then candidate Trump. So this firm shops out to Christopher Steele, who was a British spy, and he comes up with this document that would become known as a Steele Dossier. It's full of salacious allegations about Donald Trump, suggesting that Russia has blackmail information on him and that he essentially is colluding with Russia to steal the 2016 election. That's the narrative that's born out of the Steele Dossier. So then the Steele Dossier gets shopped to the FBI through Clinton campaign affiliated lawyers. The FBI takes this information and instead of properly vetting it, they send it up the chain. And I think 3 days after FBI leadership becomes aware of the Steele Dossier, Crossfire Hurricane is opened. Of course, that's the investigation.
What's Crossfire Hurricane?
Yeah. Crossfire Hurricane is the investigation that the FBI opened into the Trump campaign and its collusion with Russia.
Okay, can I just let me pause real quick just to make sure I get this. So the Hillary Clinton campaign pays a bunch of lawyers to create a dossier of allegations against Donald Trump that are not corroborated, peddles this to the FBI. They open up an investigation. They call it Crossfire Hurricane. Am I good?
Exactly.
Okay,
and
keep going.
The Crossfire Hurricane investigators use the allegations in the Steele Dossier to apply for a FISA warrant. So basically a warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was a member of the Trump campaign at the time, and view his communications with other members of the Trump campaign. So Steele Dossier is the basis, among other things, for this Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which is then the basis of this illegal spying on the Trump campaign. So when special counsel John Durham later investigates this, he finds that there was not proper justification for opening this investigation. By then, everybody knows that the Steele Dossier was fake and the spying on Carter Page was not justified because it was based on false information.
Elle, can I tell you my one funny story from this?
Please do.
So BuzzFeed eventually and CNN, I think it was January 5th or 6th, 2017, I'd have to look at my notes here, say that they're publishing the Steele Dossier. And among the other charges are that Michael Cohen, then the president's attorney, where you probably know this, where did they claimed he was somewhere in Europe, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So I called Michael Cohen and I literally said, do you have your passport? This is the weird part. He says, yeah, I keep it on me at all times, which I thought, okay, that says a lot. And so I said, have you ever been out of the country in this date range? And he said, no, there's no, stamp of entry or demarcation. There is, in fact, I know where I was that time because I was taking my son for a college visit in California. So I called the reporters and I said, hey guys, allegedly in the Steele Dossier is that Michael Cohen is in like Budapest, or again, sorry, it's been too long. And I said, that's demonstrably false. Like, we can show you that not only was he not there, he wasn't anywhere out of the country because his passport doesn't have a stamp in or out. And he knows that he was in California at that time on a college visit. And they were like, yeah, so what?
Wow.
Just to show you how ridiculously flawed that thing was. So keep going. So this thing, the FBI opens this investigation. They get FISA warrants on Carter Page. And then where does it go from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, even once everybody knew the Steele Dossier was bogus, a reasonable reporter might have said, oh, okay, well, then maybe this whole Russia-Trump collusion narrative that we've been running for however long it had been by then, maybe we should re-examine this. Well, instead, the corporate media's reaction was to be like, well, the Steele Dossier might be wrong, but this whole Crossfire Hurricane investigation is still really valid. It's still really important. And Trump is still, colluding with Russia and Trump Russia bad, And so two of the reporters that were central to the Russiagate hoax were Charlie Savage and Adam Goldman of the New York Times. So to tie us back in to Kash Patel, he was working for Representative Devin Nunes on the House Intel Committee at the time. And he was one of the first people to really uncover this Russiagate hoax. He came up with what is now known as the Nunes memo, which was this 4-page document detailing a bunch of problems with the warrant application the FBI used to obtain a warrant to spy on Carter Page. So Kash Patel is one of the guys that helped make the media look really bad for accepting the Steele Dossier. Now he's the nominee for FBI director, and Adam Goldman and Charlie Savage are not happy about it. So they come out with this hit piece.
And who do they write for?
The New York Times.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, Goldman got a Pulitzer for his participation in the Russia hoax.
These guys fail forward. They literally, I mean, okay, it just keeps getting better. We might as well give them some kind of like USAID contract.
Yeah, I mean, they get rewarded for, they were very helpful to a lot of powerful people. But they're, needless to say, not happy that Kash Patel is looking like he's going to be the next FBI director. So they come out with this hit piece trying to poke holes in Patel's role in nuking the Russiagate narrative, because obviously he made them look bad. So they try to say that Kash Patel was wrong for calling the Steele Dossier the linchpin of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, because actually there was this other tip from Australian diplomats that was the real reason the investigation was open.
They sound like fact checkers. It's like, he's right, but he could have been more right. I mean, so.
Yeah, they even said, so in that same article, they said like, well, the Nunes memo was wrong, partially because there were all these other problems that the Inspector General later found with the warrant application that the Nunes memo didn't find. So like, because of that, it's wrong. It's hilarious.
So I mean, let me just get this straight. So the Steele Dossier is a campaign-funded document that the FBI uses to open an investigation called Crossfire Hurricane to then get a FISA warrant against a Trump campaign operative. Kash Patel pokes holes in all of this, and they say, you're not as right as you can be, therefore you shouldn't be FBI director?
More or less, that's, yeah.
Okay. And we'll probably get an award for that too. So that's it? Is that like all they have? Is they're saying you weren't as accurate as you could have been, or there was more to the story that you should have known at the time that even I mean, it seems like a pretty thinly veiled attack against Kash.
Yeah. So they go through a bunch of like nitpicky, like you said a minute ago, it's the exact same play that the fact checkers, quote unquote, will do, where they'll say, well, you were kind of right, but you were missing context, or you're right, but here's why, we didn't like what you said. So yeah, they tried to claim that the Steele Dossier wasn't the real basis for the Crossfire Hurricane investigation.
But is anything in the Nunes memo wrong?
They didn't do a very good job of convincing anybody. Yeah.
So the argument, just so I'm clear on this, is the Nunes memo, which Kash Patel helped get out, is right, but it could have been more right. Is that it? Or is it that we're saying that it's fundamentally flawed?
Well, they'll tell you both. They'll tell you it was wrong, and then there's these other reasons that it was more right, which figure that one out. But yeah, like it's the same argument where they're trying to poke holes, which are at worst untrue, and at best kind of a distinction without a difference. Like, everyone knows that the Steele Dossier was the linchpin of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, whether or not the FBI said at the time that it was based on the Steele Dossier or a tip from Australian diplomat. Everyone knows that that was central to the investigation. So that's
of course it was. That's not deniable.
Yeah, that's the kind of fact check that, like, I don't know. It's a distinction without a difference.
But is it the bigger case? Wait. The funny thing is, it's a shiny nickel. The bigger case, in my opinion, and this is where I think they find the threat, is that the FBI took a campaign document and opened an investigation based off of a campaign operative's dossier that was unverified, and then issued warrants against campaign operatives, i.e. trying to tilt the balance of an election. And the real culprit probably is the FBI, and yet they're going after Kash. I would imagine Elle, because they know that if he gets in there, he's going to clean house.
Well, and they even say early on in the article, I forget how they word it, but it's basically like, Kash Patel has been critical of the FBI, and that's why he's not good to run it, because he's attacked them before. And It's like, you're totally missing the point. Everybody wants Kash Patel to run the FBI because he's been able to point out the flaws of the FBI. Like, the New York Times wants business as usual. America doesn't. And so the fact that Kash Patel has a history of pointing out corruption in the FBI, of course that makes the FBI uncomfortable. Of course,
normally they call that a whistleblower.
Yeah, like, that's what everyone voted for in November.
Right. So what, I mean, they've come after Kash though, right? Like in terms of like lawsuits and defamation things and media smears.
I mean, I think there was a new one out today. Yeah.
So who's the guy in one of the stories you raised, this guy, Norm Eisen? Who is Norm Eisen and why is he central to this?
Okay. So Norm Eisen is someone that should never be taken seriously, should never be taken in good faith. He's the guy, he's founded a bunch of left-wing nonprofits, probably foremost of which is Crew, which is the group that went searching for a plaintiff and funded the lawsuit to try to get Donald Trump kicked off the ballot in the state of Colorado. That attempt was repudiated by the Supreme Court unanimously. It didn't succeed. But this is a guy who literally tried to disenfranchise voters who wanted to vote for Trump by keeping them from being able to do that. So he's not a very pro-democracy person. He's also, his other nonprofits filed a bunch of amicus briefs in various other lawfare attempts to keep Donald Trump from becoming president in this most recent election. So Norm Eisen is a very anti-Trump person, which makes the fact that he just started a blog called The Contrarian really funny. But anyway, he's not someone that should be taken seriously. He sends this letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is about to vote on Kash Patel's nomination, trying to point out all these things that he calls ethics concerns with Kash Patel.
Like?
So the first one is this idea that Kash Patel took shares from Trump Media and Technology Group, which is the parent company of Truth Social, and that creates this conflict of interest. Well, Kash Patel is on the board at Trump Media, and it's a position that he has said he'll resign once confirmed as FBI director. And the board convened to issue shares to board members as their compensation. This is something that, so after every nomination hearing, the senators will send what's called questions for the record to the nominee, which is basically a list of written questions they might not have gotten to in the hearing or they want more information on. And then the nominee responds in writing to each of those questions. So this happened after Patel's nomination. Senators sent him a list of questions. He responded in like a 150-page document answering all their questions. Democrat Senator Adam Schiff asked him about these shares in the questions for the record. And in his response, Patel said, hey, the board convened without my presence. I wasn't there. They decided to award shares as compensation for services. But even though this was for my compensation for work I had done, I'm not going to accept them. I haven't accepted them just, for complete transparency and to avoid even the appearance of.
But there's I just don't even understand the underlying conflict. You worked on a social media. You're on the board of a social media company. What's the conflict? Unless they're a terrorist organization, which they're not. The idea that the FBI would have a conflict with Truth Social is insane. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think Kash Patel should have taken the money. I would have, because to me, you did work. You're getting compensated for it. I don't understand what's the underlying conflict that Norm Eisen is trying to say exists.
It's got the name Trump in it, Sean.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's it. So he says, I'm not going to even take the money that was awarded to me for work I did. But is there okay, so is that it?
So that's number one, which Norm Eisen has this whole letter saying, we need to reconvene, have another hearing about this so that we can get an answer. Well, Patel gave the answer that Eisen wanted in his written answers for questions for the record. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Eisen says Kash Patel did some work for the country of Qatar, and he didn't register as a foreign agent, and so that looks bad, and we need to bring him back in and ask him a bunch of questions about that. So I talked to someone who's very close to the nomination process for Mr. Patel, And he said, yeah, what he did for the country of Qatar wasn't like representing the country. It was security contracting work for the World Cup that they hosted in 2022, which is a choice that makes sense because when Kash Patel worked for the Obama Department of Justice, he was one of the prosecutors investigating the bombing at the Uganda World Cup in 2010. But what's important to understand is the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, requires you to register when you are representing essentially a foreign principal. So, for example, if you're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, you're obviously representing the interests of that foreign government. That's something that needs to be disclosed to the Department of Justice. That's a completely different ballgame than security contracting. So that's the other allegation that Eisen wants to gin up into this big controversy in his letter. It's obviously not the same thing as a real FARA violation.
Is there any sense that anybody's buying this?
I mean, so the purpose of letters like this is to give talking points to the Democrats on the committee in this case, who, they can use it now to go on TV and talk about Kash Patel and how they're concerned about ethics, which is always funny when senators are concerned about ethics. But anyway. Chairman Grassley's not buying it. I think the general expectation is that Patel is going to pass, and that he'll be confirmed. But we'll see on Thursday.
So let's just play this out. Patel gets confirmed. I think based on this FISA warrant, based on the actions of the FBI with the Steele Dossier as the underlying issue, there's a lot of things that need to be uncovered and exposed. Yeah?
Yeah. That's why Kash Patel is such a great pick.
So what's the priority list? You get in there day one. Do you just start cleaning? I mean, they've talked about getting rid of everyone who worked on January 6th. I mean, what is sort of, in your opinion, the order of priority?
Oh gosh. There's so much. Yeah, I mean, the FBI, what was it, like 5,000 people worked on January 6th. And that's, if you put gas in the car that somebody drove to go arrest a January 6th person, like, should you be fired? No. Like, I don't think the goal is to just fire everybody that touched the wrong piece of paper. But the problem with the FBI has been this institutional corruption of protecting allies and selective prosecution of political enemies, whether those are pro-lifers, whether that's literally like the president. So yeah, I think priority number one is figuring out where that corruption is, rooting it out, bringing sunlight to it, like what the Trump administration has been doing in other agencies. And I think that kind of shows you where you need to start once you do that.
So, I mean, I sort of start to think that what's been going on with DOGE and with Kash and all these things is that the left realizes that their way of doing business, the hiding of the contracts, the funding of their agenda, the people who are doing their bidding at different law enforcement, like if I were them, I'd be worried because that you have a president now who's like saying, okay, go in and root this out, not let's just sweep it under the rug anymore.
Yeah, that of course they're worried. That's why we're seeing all these hit pieces and strongly worded letters about Kash Patel. They don't want to be exposed.
Are there any Republican senators that we need to worry about?
I haven't heard of, I think on Patel's nomination, they've been better than on other ones. I know in general on a lot of Trump's nominees, we've seen some people coming out and saying they will support them this week, which that's what it's so frustrating. Like when Democrat presidents nominate people, Democrat senators just vote for them. Like they don't have to put out a statement saying, well, after a lot of careful thought, like I've decided to vote for this person. They just do it. Like they circle the wagons and it's expected. With Republicans, it's like this person who's obviously more qualified than, the luggage stealing transgender guy that Biden nominated or whatever he was. Like these people are qualified, but Republicans, instead of going along with the nominee who was nominated by a person that voters liked and like voters voted for this and they made it very clear, Republicans do this thing where they're like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna have to, like, you're gonna really have to convince me, and then maybe I'll wait to the last second before I decide to support you.
I know. It's so pathetic. You're right. I mean, I think I threw out the stat last time that every Democratic senator voted for every one of Biden's nominees, and there was some
and most Republicans did too.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that we fight our own people more than we fight theirs.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Is there anything else that we're missing on this Steele Dossier story or Kash Patel that we need to know as we go into hopefully the final days of this battle?
I mean, we could talk about the Steele Dossier for hours. It was such a complicated and like whole of left attack on Donald Trump that really hurt his ability to govern in his first term, because he was constantly fending off this Trump Russia hoax. So I think it's really important that people aren't buying that anymore. People aren't buying similar hoaxes from the media anymore.
They promote the Steele Dossier and then they play down the Hunter Biden laptop. It's amazing how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Savage and Goldman were two of the ones who did, defend I forget exactly what they said, but in the Hunter Biden laptop stuff.
Awesome. Elle Purnell from The Federalist, amazing stories you got out. I hope that you continue to keep us up to date on Kash's nomination. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a good one.
Wow, that was a great conversation with Elle. Now we are going to get an unbelievable update, like we always do, from the folks at Cygnal. They have exclusive polling that they just came out with and are ready to share it with us. Brent Buchanan is going to join us in just a second. But before we get to that, most of you I know have a fire extinguisher in your house, a first aid kit in your house, but I think you need one of these. It's a life vac, and it can make anybody a hero in the event of a choking incident. Think about that. Anybody in your house doesn't have to know the Heimlich maneuver, whether they're doing it right or whether it's up to date. You can literally save a life with a life vac. There's a reason that police and fire, restaurants, cruise lines are all putting life vacs in, because they save lives. In fact, I mentioned this the other day. There was a viewer on this show that bought a life vac that saved a life. The company called because they were very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. Thank you for doing that. But a person is alive who watches this show because someone bought a life vac. I will so happy to know I've got one in the house in case something happens, because even if I'm not here, anybody can be a hero using it in the event of a choking incident. So get your very own life vac now. Go to lifevac.net, lifevac.net, lifevac.net. Don't wait another minute. A life truly could be at stake. Lifevac.net. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome back into the show Brent Buchanan, the president of Cygnal Polling. Brent, great to see you.
Likewise.
All right, tell us what's changed. What's the lay of the land look like now, and how has it shifted since the election?
I think what's fascinating is some of the trends that we saw in the 2024 election are really accelerating. A point that stuck out to me as we were going back in the field last week with this data is how many Black men really, really like President Trump. And that was a key demographic that propelled him to victory. If you go back and read what we did in our exit poll on Election Day in 2024, we noted that it was actually non-white voters who had elected Donald Trump, and that white voters essentially had stayed flat. Non-college whites continued to move to the right. College-educated whites moved to the left. They netted each other out. And so it was these non-white voters, specifically male non-white voters, that really propelled Trump to the White House. And so for him to have a 4 of 10 approval among this audience is really impressive. I mean, if you'd have told me this data point 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
I know. It's funny. I used to tell people I could walk into a room and, generally speaking, pick out, here are the Democrats, here are the Republicans, based on what they look like, what they were wearing. I wasn't perfect, but generally speaking, I've got enough spidey sense now where you walk down the street, it's gone. I mean, I have been shocked by the number of people that are like, hey, I supported your former boss, I'm on your team. And I'm like, I didn't see that coming, you Prius driver, NPR listening dude. So it's so many demographics. What's the environment look like right now for President Trump? Job approval rating, how's the country feel about the mood, et cetera?
Yeah, there's been a huge shift in the mood of the country, people saying that we're headed in the right direction as opposed to the wrong track. And I mean, obviously, much of that was shifted by Republican voters. But Even women under the age of 55 have shifted 19 points away from wrong direction towards right track. Independents have shifted 27 points towards right direction. And interestingly, I think that Democrats only moving towards wrong direction by 16 points is actually pretty impressive. It kind of, to me, lays out the fact that you're not seeing a ton of pushback from Democrats because, one, they don't know what in the world to do with Donald Trump executing 10 things a day and changing the media narrative by the hour. But really, it doesn't seem like they're incredibly mad about what's happening right now, which is a wholesale change compared to this point 8 years ago at the beginning of Trump 1.0.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, do Democratic leaders, when they go flail like Chuck Schumer does, out at these, the problem is I don't think they have a unified message because they don't know their people, these demographics that are usually with them, are now moving over to Team Trump. And so I feel like they don't know what they want to say because they don't even know who they represent anymore.
Yep. Yeah, completely. And then they're also losing the base that used to propel them to victories, which Democrats always said demographics is destiny. And now that actually is the Republican mantra for the new coalition of Republican voters. Like, here's an incredible point about the generic ballot. So do you want the Republican or the Democrat for your congressional district? No names associated with it. Union households, or if there was either a union member, him or herself, or a union member in the household, shifted towards Republicans by 22 points just from January. So you're starting to see this change within who is making up the bases of the parties. And so I think the Democrats just haven't figured out yet that they're the party of the coastal elites. And so the things that they do, when you look at it through the lens of the fact that they're the party of the coastal elites, you start to say, okay, now I see why they're so insane.
Yeah. How are some of his people doing? Like, let's take RFK. What, you guys looked at that? What did you find?
Well, I mean, RFK is net even 46-46 on favorable, unfavorable, which I would say is a win.
That's a win, right? Considering the onslaught that he's had.
Yeah, he's had nothing but negative news, and he's been nothing but positive in return. He is upside. He's become very partisan. So 78% favorability with Republicans, 76% unfavorability with Democrats, and then independents are 36 fav, 53 unfav. And so, there's definitely a partisan aspect to it. And if we were to go back and look at his image 10 months ago when he was running for president, I would bet that he was probably net positive with independents. And so that definitely has been a change. But the Republicans have fully come on board the RFK Jr. train.
How about Elon? What do people think about how he's doing?
Well, so we asked a question about his efforts in going in, and we named him specifically in the question, and we said going in, and let me get to the question specifically, but it was asking, how people view the work that he's doing to reduce the size of government by federal employee buyouts, funding cuts, department closures. So really laying out in an unbiased fashion what exactly he is doing currently, and that has about a 1 point net support. Again,
is that party pretty much?
Complete party, 82% support with Republicans, 81% opposition with Democrats, and then independents are only upside down by 5 points. And so when you're doing the math, you can see that these three groups, Republican, Independent, Democrat, are not even groups. And so that's one of the things that really propelled Republicans to the win in 24 is that more Republicans turned out. And so we're still seeing that same trend where more Republicans are saying that they're going to be voting in the 26 election than Democrats. And so even if you don't win independents, you can just hold your own. You can still win the election. But when you go look at Elon's name specifically, just to get back to that, he has gotten upside down in his image. So 43% fav, 50% unfav. But I would venture to say that he enjoys taking the bullets for the president.
I think he does.
And completely. And the president, even though he may not like the chaos that comes from all the things Elon's doing so quickly, appreciates the fact that he is taking the flack that would normally be coming at him.
I know one of the big issues that the president campaigned on and has taken swift and decisive action on is the border and immigration.
Yeah.
How is that faring?
Well, we said, do you support or oppose the actions taken so far by the Trump administration about illegal immigration and border security? 53% support, only 38% opposition. And so this is where you get 16% of Democrats that are saying they support it. It's plus 10 among independents. And so this is very much a winning issue. Anything Donald Trump can do on the economy or on illegal immigration is going to have almost no friction for him and very limited opposition.
So give me an example of like, what would you recommend that he do? I know obviously immigration, every day we're seeing bold, decisive action from Kristi Noem and Tom Homan, et cetera. What would your advice be to him on the economy? Because tariffs are top of mind to him. There's concerns about what they might do to prices. So if he said, Brent, what do I need to do to show the American people I'm tackling immigration? What would be a couple things that might help show how serious he is about that?
Well, first off, voters don't really understand tariffs in the first place. The Democrats are going to try to brand it as a Trump tax, but it's so hard. Like, it doesn't show up on your receipt. So it's hard to know that if some price increased, and we've been seeing nothing but price increases for the last several years during the Biden administration, it's really hard to say, okay, well, a tariff increased this by some amount. This used to be $5 now.
But do you care, right? I mean, my point is, if X goes up $5, do I really care what caused it? I just know who was in charge then.
Correct. And that's why my advice would be explain what you're going to do to measure the economy, because it's not the stock market, or it shouldn't be, because most people are not in the stock market and don't follow it. And when it goes up, 10,000 points, their life is no better. Their life probably is actually worse. And so it's explaining, this is what has caused the problems thus far, and here's what I'm going to be doing about it, because the economy is just such a big concept and nobody has any idea what levers you can pull. I think it's part of the reason that Republicans didn't have a red wave in 2022 in the midterms and only a red trickle, is because voters just didn't agree that saying that inflation is up and I'm going to cut it cuts it for actually doing something about the economy. So I think Trump really needs to use his bully pulpit to explain, these are the causes. This is why I'm doing a tariff. This is what the benefit to you is going to be. Because you've always got to make it about what's in it for me, for the voter. And I think the economy is just such a massive topic that people can't even wrap their mind around what all involves. It involves what levers there are to pull. How can those levers be pulled to benefit the regular American?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, politicians like that's their job, is to go back and say, this is what I did for you. And so that's exactly right. They got to frame it like that. But you also looked at the issue of the president rooting out DEI from the government, and that actually fared pretty well.
Yeah, we've asked questions in the past about, are you for diversity, equity, and inclusion? And of course, you get this, ridiculously high number when it's this ephemeral concept of equality, because nobody wants to be unequal. So of course, you're going to answer that, yes, I'm for this, the description of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you describe what that actually means, when you go that route, it means you are ignoring merit and experience. And you are instead saying that racial and gender and other identities matter more in hiring decisions than merit and experience. So we decided to say, and make it just about the government, because that is where a lot of this is being rooted out, is, do you think government employees should be hired more based on merit and experience, or racial and gender identity? And only 3% of America said racial and gender identity, which you normally get more than 3% of jokers in a poll who just like to screw with the results and answer the ridiculous option. So it was lower than the joker responses. And 64% of folks said merit and experience. So I think the real messaging win on this is not just saying, this is what DEI is, let's get rid of it. Let's say, this is what DEI killed. And that is that your merit and your experience don't matter in hiring. And that's what we're getting back to.
I was surprised you guys asked a question about acquiring Greenland, and it shocked me that a plurality support his efforts to take over Greenland.
Yeah.
And where's that coming from? I mean, is that just the base?
Manifest destiny. We're not just getting a golden era. We're going to go back to manifest destiny. I think that's where it comes from. And we explained why in it, and I believe that's the reason. So in the question, we said acquiring it as to increase our advantage over nations like Russia and China, and to boost our national security and our economy. And that, again, you have to explain to voters why you're doing something. They are much smarter than pundits and establishment politicians give them credit for.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing that I thought was fascinating, and the CIA has now come out in favor of this, is you polled what people think about the origins of COVID. I don't know that I was surprised by the people that agreed with this, but the thing that I thought was fascinating is only 17% in your poll agreed with Fauci and the Democrats that the virus probably arose from natural causes.
Yeah. And I really expected that question to be very heavy on Democrats saying it because they just are so bought in. I mean, they're still wearing masks, go travel. And you were talking about earlier, I can't walk down the street and pick people out. Well, let me tell you, you can still pick out a progressive pretty easily. And it was only 28% of Democrats who said that it had originated from natural causes. So the plurality of Democrats believe it came from a lab leak in China. And in my mind, that just tells the whole story right there.
Yeah, if you're using pronouns in your bio or you're wearing a mask, I think I still got you.
Yep. Or you just look miserable.
The last thing I always want to touch on is that you guys looked about at the polarization within media and media consumption. Tell me what you found in that question.
Well, a lot of it is just a continuation of what we had been seeing. And I kind of look at the polarization within the media in juxtaposition with how much attention are people paying to the news. And when you go look at these more diverse populations, when you look at people who are parents, which are in that generational gap or the generational range that shifted pretty hard to the right, like Gen X, for example, shifted really hard to the right in the last election, they're just not paying nearly as swing voters, not paying nearly as much attention to the news. But when they do, they're going to social media. So white voters are only 36 or 39% getting their news from social media. And again, you can pick up to 3 options. So when I'm giving these stats, they're not going to equal 100. They're going to be more than 100. But 63% of black voters, 65% of Hispanic voters, 61% of parents, 51% of union households are getting their information from social media. And when you look at black and Hispanic Americans, they are a third are getting their information from YouTube. So the fact of in the days of watching all of everybody in America watching the 3 news networks at 6 o'clock or 6:30 in the evening is just, those are bygone days. And people who do that are more likely to be Democrats. If you watch national broadcast news, 47% of Democrats say that's where they're getting their news from. So they're still living in this world that has the rest of America that's shifting right is living in a different media consumption world.
Love it.
Brent
Buchanan, I always love what you guys do. You ask great questions. You bring us great insights. I always appreciate you taking the time to share them with us. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, tomorrow, Congressman Ben Cline on the DOGE efforts to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. Victor Davis Hanson on Friday. Great panel on Thursday. All I'm saying is make sure you hit that subscribe button now because you don't want to miss one. I always put out that newsletter. Today is going to be one of them. Go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up. It's free. Always love the VIP members, but SeanSpicer.com. Great column today that is some really outside-the-box thinking on D.C. You're going to want to see that. Plus, I've got a take that I'm already working on for Friday on the media, SeanSpicer.com. Thanks for spending your day with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.